On his very first day at a new company, the boy is taken by surprise. The cold and elegant CEO of the company turns out to be the same graceful, intellectual woman he had randomly met abroad just a few days ago. The difference in their identities makes her instinctively want to avoid him. So he stands at the entrance, giving herself quiet encouragement, trying to calm her heart. Only after adjusting her mindset does he finally gather the courage to step inside. During the morning meeting, the boy looked at the woman on stage, the same intellectual yet wild older sister from a few days ago, and couldn't help but smile. At that moment, the CEO on stage also recognized the boy among the crowd. For a brief moment, the air seemed to freeze. All the company employees turned their heads in surprise and focused their gaze on the boy. The boy, realizing that the CEO had recognized him, quickly turned his head away instinctively. Their eyes met. The boy nodded at her with a silly smile, and the CEO also smiled helplessly. Just as excitement surged in the boy's heart, the two met again after the meeting ended. This time, the cold and distant expression on the CEO's face suddenly made the boy feel disappointed. But in truth, the CEO's heart was far from composed. As soon as she returned to her office, she hurriedly called her secretary and asked for the boy's information. Then she sat beside her desk, lost in thoughts of their encounter 2 years ago. A few days ago, the strong and capable woman had just finalized her divorce and went to Cuba to handle the hotel her ex-husband left behind. After completing the handover, she originally planned to take a sleeping pill and get a good night's rest. But right before that, she discovered a postcard with a western seaside view on the hotel desk. Attracted by the scenery on the postcard, she went alone to the seaside to see the western ocean. Shortly after sitting down at a viewpoint, the effects of the sleeping pill kicked in, and Soo-hyun's head suddenly felt dizzy. Just as she was about to fall, Young-hyuk, who was backpacking in Cuba, rushed forward and caught her in time. He wanted to ask if Soo-hyun was okay, but due to the effect of the medicine, she directly fell asleep on his shoulder. Hearing Soo-hyun's words, Jung-hyuk was speechless. As she turned her head, Soo-hyun's shoe suddenly slipped off. With no other choice, Jung-hyuk let her sleep on his shoulder for the entire afternoon. When Soo-hyun woke up and saw Jung-hyuk in front of her, she widened her eyes in shock. She wanted to question him about what happened. Jung-hyuk hurriedly explained the situation and then got up, preparing to leave. But Soo-hyun suddenly called out to him and asked him to help retrieve her shoe. Jung-hyuk hesitated for a moment, but when he was about to go down, Soo-hyun was suddenly attracted by the distant sunset and unconsciously let out an exclamation. Hearing her, Jung-hyuk turned around and took out his earphones. Just like that, Soo-hyun put on Jung-hyuk's earphones. Accompanied by a beautiful melody, Soo-hyun was instantly immersed in the stunning scenery in front of her. Jung-hyuk had already picked up her shoe, and before leaving, he noticed that Soo-hyun's ankle had been rubbed raw by the heel. He even took off his own shoes, and together with Soo-hyun, walked barefoot down from the dock. Considerately, he helped her pick out a pair of slippers from a nearby roadside stall and accompanied her to check in at a local fly-infested eatery. This made Soo-hyun, who had always lived as a strong and powerful woman, feel an unprecedented sense of relaxation. When they were about to part ways, Jung-hyuk mentioned that he was flying back home the next afternoon and asked if she'd like to meet again the next day. But Soo-hyun, unsure of her schedule, hesitated and didn't dare to give him a firm answer. The next morning, Jung-hyuk arrived early at the cafe where they had agreed to meet, but Soo-hyun missed the appointment because she had to sign a contract. By the time she finished her work and rushed over, Jung-hyuk had already boarded the train to the airport. She thought that their brief connection had come to an end, but unexpectedly, just as she returned to her home country, Jung-hyuk came knocking at her door. The woman could never have imagined that the sweet puppy-like boy she fell in love with at first sight overseas had become an employee in her own company after returning home. After the morning meeting ended, the two met again, but Soo-hyun's expression seemed extremely cold. Seeing this, Jung-hyuk couldn't help but feel a bit disheartened. However, Soo-hyun's heart was far from calm. She called her secretary and asked him to bring her all of Jung-hyuk's information. After comparing and confirming the details, she realized that the resume matched exactly with the self-introduction Jung-hyuk had given her abroad. Her heart couldn't help but flutter with joy. As she walked downstairs, Soo-hyun unintentionally saw Jung-hyuk at the stairwell talking on the phone, smiling cheerfully. Instinctively, Soo-hyun asked her secretary, what kind of person would make a man show such a joyful expression while on the phone? Hearing the secretary's reply, Soo-hyun felt a little surprised. Later that evening, on the way home from work, Soo-hyun suddenly remembered that Jung-hyuk had mentioned in his resume a nearby abandoned amusement park. He had written that whenever she felt unhappy, she would go to that amusement park and sit on the swing to zone out. Soo-hyun asked the driver if he knew where this place was that Jung-hyuk had talked about. Even though she spoke casually, she couldn't resist going there. Sitting on the swing that Jung-hyuk had described, she really did feel a moment of peace in her heart. Just then, Jung-hyuk, who had just gotten off work, suddenly saw Soo-hyun in the distance. Hearing movement, Soo-hyun turned around and saw Jung-hyuk on the other side. Her expression instantly turned awkward. Jung-hyuk warmly greeted her, and Soo-hyun quickly collected herself. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the two shared a slightly awkward moment. Soo-hyun was about to turn and leave, but Jung-hyuk suddenly called out to her. He told her that when they were in Cuba, he had secretly taken a photo of her and asked if she would like to see it together. They went to a convenience store entrance where Jung-hyuk placed the film onto a light box and demonstrated to Soo-hyun how to view it. As Soo-hyun looked at the innocent and cheerful Jung-hyuk, she suddenly felt a strange flutter in her heart. The two of them then started playing with the claw machine next to them. Jung Hyuk originally wanted to show off his skills, but after trying for a long time, he still couldn't catch the toy. Instead, it was Soo Hyun who hit the target on her very first try. Seeing this, Jung Hyuk quickly explained that he was actually a claw machine expert, but because his boss, Soo Hyun, was standing beside him, he got too nervous and failed. When a boy is outside, he must protect himself well. Don't believe it? Look at this young man. He drank a little too much and stepped out, only to be spotted by the company's female CEO. While the young man was waiting for a bus at the station, the CEO suddenly pulled up her car. Seeing that Jung Hyuk was drunk beyond measure, Soo Hyun originally didn't want to bother, but in the end, she couldn't resist and honked the horn. After getting in the car, the goofy Jung Hyuk immediately got excited. He cheerfully talked about the fun he had at dinner and pulled at the zipper of his tie to demonstrate to Soo Hyun how convenient it was. Soo Hyun was instantly charmed by his cuteness. The two chatted happily all the way and soon arrived in front of Jung Hyuk's house. Silly Jung Hyuk, worried that Soo Hyun might feel sleepy while driving back, pulled out a piece of squid jerky from his pocket and tried to feed it to her. Soo Hyun quickly reached out to stop him, but Jung Hyuk started acting overly sentimental. Seeing this, Soo Hyun had no choice but to let him give her the squid jerky. Didn't they say fans can also smell the scent of squid? Aye. Jung Hyuk was completely panicked inside. As soon as he arrived at the company, he immediately went to find Soo Hyun to apologize. Soo Hyun first handed him some hangover medicine and then helped him recall what happened. Those wool pants? They were gray, right? They looked great on you, Mr. Kim Junyang. Do those shoes and the hat also have links? Jung Hyuk almost wanted to crawl into a hole. He tried to apologize again, but Soo Hyun told him there was no need. If he truly felt guilty, he could make it up to her by having a bowl of instant noodles with her after work. On the way there, Soo Hyun teasingly asked Jung Hyuk, "Why didn't you try stuffing squid into my mouth today? Even if I'm stripped of my dignity, I will firmly refuse you," Jung Hyuk replied. "Director, your mouth is really too ruthless." Hearing this, Soo Hyun burst into laughter. Before getting out of the car, she thoughtfully put on her hat, and then the two of them went to the noodle shop together. Their first official date. The whole day had gone really well for the two of them. When Jung Hyuk was about to leave, he sweetly wrote his phone number on his hand and took a photo using Soo Hyun's phone. He thought that with such lightning-fast progress, the two of them would soon be together. But the next day, as soon as Jung Hyuk arrived at the company, an explosive scandal spread throughout. The female CEO, who had just gotten divorced not long ago, was suddenly rumored to be dating the company's sweet little junior. Everyone in the company was shocked. Even the ex-husband's mother came straight to Soo Hyun, warning her that if she didn't resolve the issue quickly, she would be sued for damaging the reputation of their family and for misusing the marital property that had been divided after the divorce. She wanted to reclaim the hotel. Soo Hyun tried to explain that she and Jung Hyuk were just ordinary colleagues, but her former mother-in-law directly pulled out Jung Hyuk's personal file and photos of the two of them together. Soo Hyun still wanted to counter by saying she was already divorced, but the moment she heard her former mother-in-law's words, she fell silent. She knew very well that even though she was divorced, the business ties between the two families had long locked her in place. The former mother-in-law told Soo Hyun that if she didn't fire Jung Hyuk within 3 days, the fairy tale hotel that had been allocated to her would immediately be renamed and transferred to someone else. But what Soo Hyun didn't know was that the scandal report had actually been leaked to the press by her former mother-in-law, who had already conspired with Soo Hyun's own mother. Both of them wanted Soo Hyun to obediently give up the hotel and return to her ex-husband's side. The next morning, Soo Hyun's mother came to the company to meet her. She told Soo Hyun that she and the former mother-in-law had already discussed the matter and decided to label Jung Hyuk as a perverted stalker in the media and put all the blame on him. But when Soo Hyun heard this, she became furious. She couldn't tolerate letting the innocent Jung Hyuk take the fall for her. After a fierce argument with her mother and having no other choice, Soo Hyun went to the one person she least wanted to ask for help, her ex-husband. When Yusuk heard Soo Hyun's plea, she gave a bitter smile. She had thought it was just a silly scandal when it first came out, but seeing Soo Hyun so anxious now, she couldn't help but feel jealous, yet still agreed to help. The truth was, Yusuk had always deeply loved Soo Hyun, but after their marriage, she saw how her own mother continuously suppressed and exploited Soo Hyun. Soo Hyun had never been happy beside her. That's why Yusuk found a reason to ask for a divorce. One day at a luxury boutique, Yusuk took a liking to a dress, but when she asked the staff to wrap it up, the sales assistant informed her that the dress had already been reserved. Feeling helpless, she turned around. The sales assistant thought Yusuk was planning to buy everything. The clerk awkwardly smiled, took the black credit card, and after completing the purchase, Yusuk stepped out and immediately called Soo Hyun's secretary. But the secretary answered and told her that Soo Hyun had gone on a business trip out of town. Hearing this, Yusuk had no choice but to send the gift to the front desk of Soo Hyun's company. After they met that day, Yusuk suddenly wanted to win Soo Hyun back but didn't know how to say it. As she was about to leave in the parking lot, she suddenly saw Soo Hyun arriving in a cargo truck with a man sitting beside her, her face filled with disbelief. But as the two stepped down from the truck, Yusuk realized that the man with Soo Hyun was the very same young employee involved in the scandal a few days ago. Watching the two of them from a distance, the jealousy buried in Yusuk's heart surged once again. But what she didn't know was that the reason things had escalated to this point was all thanks to her own mother. 2 days earlier, after she had asked her mother to help suppress the scandal between Soo Hyun and Jung Jung Hyuk. Her mother, upset that her goal hadn't been achieved, secretly sabotaged things again. She directly contacted the artist who was going to hold an art exhibition at Soo-hyun's hotel and made him cancel the collaboration. When Soo-hyun learned about this, she immediately went alone to a different city to meet the artist in person and try to talk things through. Soo-hyun's uncle, knowing she hadn't been in a good mood lately, heard about this from the secretary and directly called Jung Hyuk because he had once seen how happy Soo-hyun was when she was with Jung Hyuk. So he wanted to take Jung Hyuk with him to help comfort Soo-hyun, and just as he hoped, with Jung Hyuk's company, even something as childish as digging in the sand became incredibly fun for the two of them. Soo-hyun's father called to ask about her condition, and her uncle looked at the two from afar. That evening, after returning to the hotel, Jung Hyuk unintentionally overheard during their conversation that Soo-hyun couldn't fall asleep every night without taking sleeping pills. This made him feel deeply sorry for her. As he lay in bed that night, he tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Suddenly, someone on the radio requested a song that was very familiar. It was the same song he and Soo-hyun had listened to together in Cuba. Recalling that her uncle had mentioned Soo-hyun liked listening to the radio late at night, Jung Hyuk immediately realized it must have been her who requested the song. It turned out that during these long, lonely nights, they had always been thinking of each other. Overwhelmed by dopamine, he rushed out at midnight and knocked on a neighbor's door, borrowing a truck from them. He was going to find Soo-hyun and boldly confess his feelings to her. Hearing what Soo-hyun said, Jung Hyuk suddenly felt a bit angry. He thought that if they were just friends, things shouldn't be so ambiguous between them. He courageously confessed his love to Soo-hyun, but she didn't know how to respond. However, Jung Hyuk wasn't discouraged. He knew Soo-hyun just needed some time to slowly accept him. After finishing their meal, the two went to the seaside to have coffee. Seeing the wind was strong, Jung Hyuk took off his down jacket and gently placed it over Soo-hyun. Then he began telling her some cheesy romantic lines. Soo-hyun was flustered and swayed by his charm, but at that moment, Jung Hyuk lowered his head and pretended to be sleepy, resting directly on her shoulder. In that moment, Soo-hyun's heart felt like a little deer trapped inside, frantically crashing all around. She softly told Jung Hyuk that the reason she didn't accept him was because she was afraid. Afraid that if the two of them really got together, her family would interfere. If that happened, they might not even be able to remain friends. But little did she know, every word she said was heard by Jung Hyuk. The next day at work, Jung Hyuk unexpectedly learned from his coworkers that tomorrow was Soo-hyun's birthday. So after work, he ran to the mall to pick out a gift for her. But just as he was waiting for the bus to go home, Soo-hyun, who happened to be passing by, saw him and lost focus for a moment, causing her to get into a minor traffic accident. As soon as Soo-hyun got out of the car, Jung Hyuk ran over to her. He stood in front of her and immediately handled the situation. Seeing that Soo-hyun wasn't in a good state, he grabbed her hand and pulled her into the front passenger seat. When they reached her home, Soo-hyun wanted to get out of the car, but Jung Hyuk insisted that she wait one more minute. He took out the lipstick he had carefully selected and handed it to Soo-hyun. Though it wasn't a luxurious gift compared to other expensive ones, it still represented his heartfelt feelings. The domineering female CEO, nearly 40 and still a virgin, was unexpectedly being gossiped about as a nightclub queen. Rumors spread all over the company forum that she was using her position to toy with male employees. Soon, curious employees gathered around. Senior management wanted Soo-hyun to give a public explanation. Faced with such malicious slander, Soo-hyun originally didn't want to respond. But just then, a soft voice called out behind her. It was a tall young man walking toward her with a smile and confident steps. Looking at the man who stood up for her, Soo-hyun's eyes filled with glittering tears. This also meant that Jung Hyuk was once again dragged into the storm. Sure enough, the next day, while eating in the company cafeteria, Jung Hyuk overheard people whispering behind his back, saying he was the man being kept by the female CEO. The rumors became unbearable, and he could only quickly excuse himself from his colleagues and hide alone in the restaurant, silently heartbroken. Just then, he received a message from the CEO on his phone, and his mood instantly brightened. It turned out that Soo-hyun had seen the downcast Jung Hyuk while passing by a street corner. Seizing this rare opportunity, Jung Hyuk boldly invited Soo-hyun to skip work and go on an outing together. With the CEO backing him, Jung Hyuk easily got half a day off. Under a quiet overpass, Jung Hyuk accompanied Soo-hyun for a walk to relax. When he asked her to turn around, a series of exquisite oil paintings appeared on the bridge, a unique art exhibition that broadened Soo-hyun's horizons and healed both their troubled moods. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun's ex-husband had also gotten hold of Jung Hyuk's profile. The woman he once loved deeply had slipped away just like that. On their first blind date, Soo-hyun had shyly asked him what kind of girl he liked, and said she would try to become that kind of girl. The life of luxury had left Soo-hyun with permanent emotional scars. Under Jung Hyuk's strong, puppy-like pursuit, Soo-hyun finally let go of everything and confirmed their relationship. Sitting on the back of Jung Hyuk's bicycle, Soo-hyun smiled brightly with pure happiness. Though she had experienced marriage before, it was the first time she truly felt the sweetness of love. Jung Hyuk, determined to make this romance last, bought a cake to commemorate the day they made their relationship official. He wrote the words "Love May" on the calendar. The room was filled with gifts they had exchanged from the beginning until now. When updating the calendar on his phone, Soo-hyun placed this gift deeply into her heart. As Jung Hyuk thought about what nickname he should give Soo-hyun, he chuckled, realizing maybe he was being too eager. After all, this was the first day of love for an nearly 50-year-old cold and elegant CEO. Picking up the lipstick gifted by this sweet puppy-like boy, Soo-hyun couldn't help but apply a few extra strokes. Stepping out of her luxury car, she accidentally caught sight of Jung-hyuk rushing to work on the roadside. The once icy expression of the cold CEO had softened. Even in the office, as she reviewed documents, her eyes overflowed with warmth and affection. But this beautiful moment was soon interrupted by the sudden appearance of her mother. She ordered Soo-hyun to immediately prepare to remarry her chaebol ex-husband. Her father's upcoming election needed support from her ex-in-law's family. Things didn't look good for Jung-hyuk either. As a low-ranking employee, he was deliberately assigned to the company's most difficult project by colleagues. But in reality, it was all a scheme, orchestrated by Soo-hyun's former mother-in-law. Her plan was to use the hotel's grand opening ceremony that afternoon to publicly humiliate Jung-hyuk, a man who resembled Jae Cho, and use the scandalous relationship between Soo-hyun and Jung-hyuk to take back the hotel from Soo-hyun's control. The opening venue was being decorated busily. During short breaks, the two of them still managed to steal private moments together. Soo-hyun helped Jung-hyuk adjust his tie, just like a loving wife would. The sweet puppy-like Jung-hyuk was so happy he nearly fainted from joy. However, this very scene happened to be witnessed by Soo-hyun's ex-husband. The strong affection between the two pierced him deeply, so much so that the man took the initiative to confront Jung-hyuk. He started off by complimenting Jung-hyuk's tie, but when Jung-hyuk casually mentioned it was a gift from someone else, the man was almost about to explode with anger. The hotel's grand opening press conference went smoothly, but just as it was about to end, one of the reporters, who had been deliberately planted, suddenly asked about the rumor of Soo-hyun dating a junior employee in her own company. Soo-hyun didn't want to respond at first, but the reporter maliciously accused Jung-hyuk of being a stalker, saying the relationship was one-sided. The reporter's pressing questions continued, and in the distance, Jung-hyuk's figure was walking away from the crowd. What exactly was the relationship between them? That was something even Jung-hyuk himself wanted to know. Looking at him walking away through the crowd, Soo-hyun finally decided not to back down. A woman surrounded by public scrutiny, she bravely faced the media and admitted she had fallen in love with a low-level employee in her company. What kind of courage does it take to say that out loud? Everyone at the scene was shocked. Her former mother-in-law was so furious, she clenched her teeth in hatred. If things continued this way, Soo-hyun would completely lose the chance to reconcile with her son. The former mother-in-law immediately ordered her subordinates to get rid of Jung-hyuk. Citing a steep decline in the company's stock prices, shareholders at the meeting began expressing their dissatisfaction with Soo-hyun. While Soo-hyun was being kept away, one of the former mother-in-law's people went to Jung-hyuk's office and coldly threatened him, telling him that because of him, Soo-hyun was on the verge of losing her position as hotel president. He was given a choice: resign or accept a transfer elsewhere. But the icy CEO wasn't going to back down. She stormed into the company for her puppy-like lover, and everyone in the office was shocked by her powerful aura. Someone had dared to use her business trip as an opportunity to reassign the very puppy-like man who had stolen her heart again and again. Backed by her former mother-in-law's influence, the subordinate acted fearlessly, but Soo-hyun warned him coldly. Starting today, she would openly go to war with her ex-mother-in-law. At that moment, the deeply wronged Jung-hyuk arrived outside the office. The secretary assumed he was there to complain to Soo-hyun and didn't want to open the door, but the secretary underestimated how deeply Jung-hyuk loved Soo-hyun. Soo-hyun wanted to stop Jung-hyuk from being transferred from headquarters, but Jung-hyuk knew that fighting against her ex-mother-in-law would only make Soo-hyun's situation even harder. He refused to let her take the risk for him. Searching online for the place he was about to be transferred to, Jung-hyuk felt a sour ache in his heart, knowing it would be hard to see Soo-hyun freely like he could now. Flipping through his phone, he realized he didn't have a single photo of Soo-hyun, and so a bold idea popped into his mind. He was going to run to see her. Even after drinking a whole bottle of water, Jung-hyuk still felt thirsty, but he finally found Soo-hyun. He asked her if the way he always appeared so suddenly made him seem like a stalker, just as others said. But Soo-hyun replied softly that he was even more like a boyfriend. From subtle flirtation to now being called a boyfriend, Jung-hyuk was overwhelmed with emotion. Wanting to leave something to remember this moment by, he pulled out his phone and took their first photo together. Soon, the day of their separation came. Neither of them wanted to part. Jung-hyuk took Soo-hyun to the park for a walk. Reflecting on this painful yet an unbreakable bond of emotion, Soo-hyun couldn't help but let sour tears fall from her eyes. Back home, she, who had never cooked before, was now busy preparing dinner for Jung-hyuk. Jung-hyuk gently hugged her from behind, filled with affection. Where would this heartbreaking love between them lead? Handsome Jung-hyuk greeted the hotel guests with his signature smile. Suddenly, a little girl's cry rang out in the lobby. Approaching them to ask what happened, he learned that the little girl had lost her doll during checkout. Her mother tried to comfort her by saying they could buy a new one, but the little girl insisted she only wanted her original toy. After calming the child down, Jung-hyuk decided to help find the doll. But a colleague beside him reminded him that the laundry room had received a large amount of bed linen that day. Finding such a tiny doll in there would be unrealistic. However, looking at the little girl's heartbroken face, Jung-hyuk still decided to give it a try. He quickly bid farewell to the mother and daughter and went to the laundry room alone to begin the search. fridge. In front of him stood several carts full of used bed sheets. He could only search one by one, sheet by sheet. Meanwhile, more linens were continuously being delivered, but Jung-hyuk never gave up. Hours passed. The mother, waiting in the lounge, started to look anxious. Jung-hyuk still hadn't found it, and he was drenched in sweat from non-stop searching. Removing his mask to catch his breath, he continued working. Those around him believed his effort was meaningless. Even if he found it, there would be no reward. Finally, as he shook a towel, a small doll fell out from inside. Picking up the little teddy bear from the floor, Jung-hyuk was overjoyed. He excitedly ran to give it back to the little girl. Seeing her lost toy returned, the girl lit up with happiness. This gentle and caring young man touched everyone with his genuine service. A camera captured his focused expression as he worked. After taking the photo, the mother handed a business card to the hotel manager. The manager was stunned. She turned out to be a reporter for a travel agency magazine. A few days later, breaking news spread throughout the hotel's headquarters. Thanks to Jung-hyuk's heartwarming actions, their hotel had been featured in Traveler magazine and was rated the most recommended hotel of the year. Being selected by Traveler magazine was the dream of every hotel professional. The manager wanted to share this exciting news with Soo-hyun, but Soo-hyun had run into serious trouble. In Cuba, the hotel owner who had agreed to the acquisition suddenly backed out. The reason? Someone had maliciously interfered, claiming Soo-hyun planned to tear down the owner's most treasured courtyard. Before Soo-hyun could arrive, Jung-hyuk had already flown to Cuba ahead of her. He found the owner and explained the situation in person. During their conversation, the elderly owner recognized Jung-hyuk. His touching story had been featured in international magazines. Moved, the hotel owner agreed to his request. By the time Soo-hyun arrived, Jung-hyuk had already taken care of everything for her. The next chapter was now fully theirs. There was no constant media coverage exposing their relationship. No prying eyes like before. They could do whatever they wanted. Their relationship quickly grew deeper. With everything settled, Jung-hyuk happily held Soo-hyun in his arms as they boarded their return flight. As a low-level employee, Jung-hyuk had resolved a major crisis for the company. Soo-hyun finally had a valid reason to bring him back to her side. "We should break up. Why are you leaving me?" On the roadside, Jung-hyuk's lonely figure stood behind, hoping with all his heart that Soo-hyun would run back to him and say she was lying. Jung-hyuk's phone kept ringing again and again in the room. The moment he could no longer hear Soo-hyun's voice, the cruel reality pierced straight into his heart. I can't do it. In these 2 years, they had walked together through wind and rain, but still lost to reality. One was the daughter of a wealthy Korean chaebol family, the other just an ordinary employee in the company. A love between mismatched backgrounds brought pressure from all directions onto both families. I hope I can understand. Eventually, a mother who loved her son deeply came to find Soo-hyun. Because of Jung-hyuk's relationship with a chaebol heiress, rumors were flying all over the neighborhood. Some even claimed Jung-hyuk had schemed his way into her heart just to climb the social ladder, even asking him for job referrals. You're not really going to marry Jung-hyuk, are you? Even if you did, it wouldn't be a proper marriage, right? Please break up with Jung-hyuk for his sake. How could Soo-hyun say no to a mother's love for her son? This relationship had always felt like a dream, beautiful but destined to end when one wakes up. When they met again at the company, the two had already become the most familiar strangers. No words were exchanged, only silent blessings in their hearts. Jung-hyuk sat in his office and began to write his resignation letter. But when he got to the part about the reason for leaving, memories of the beautiful times he shared with Soo-hyun flooded back. He couldn't hesitate anymore. He rushed toward Soo-hyun's office. Seeing her increasingly weary son, Jung-hyuk's mother regretted her past decision deeply. She once again went to find Soo-hyun, hoping to receive her forgiveness. After all, love was something between the two of them. It was she who had placed too much pressure on them. On the desk, Jung-hyuk had placed the high heels from the first time he met Soo-hyun. In that moment, all the beautiful memories surged back. Remembering everything, Soo-hyun could no longer hold back. He stood up and rushed outside. Snow began to fall from the night sky, the first snow of the year. Soo-hyun walked in the direction of Jung-hyuk's home. At the same time, missing Soo-hyun dearly, Jung-hyuk had arrived at the amusement park from his childhood. Amidst the swirling snowflakes, Soo-hyun saw Jung-hyuk's lonely figure. A familiar voice rang out. Jung-hyuk turned around, and the woman he had loved so deeply was standing right in front of him. In the end, beneath a sky filled with falling snow, the two embraced each other tightly. And with this beautiful story come to an end.